He's in a seated position, right?
Correct.
You ever do it standing?
I do.
It's the first problem. In a seated position, everything is written, and that's how we close. Don't ever present numbers standing. We close on our seat, we sell on our feet. Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, I noticed a couple things that are concerning to me. I told you if I found something concerning, I would let you know. Where can we sit? Is this where we're gonna sit? And I'm gonna sit here with you just like this. I'm gonna set you here, and by the way, just so everybody's aware, if you're ever in a seated position, ever in any industry with somebody, you write it down. You get knee to knee with them. You close face to face. You never present standing up. Rule number one, no numbers ever get presented standing up. How much is it? Well, there's a couple different ways we could go to really explain it to you. Where's a place we could sit down real quick? Because I want to explain it in case you have any questions. I want you to be able to interrupt me. Is that okay? Where can we sit? See, move them, shift them. Where are we going? Living room? We going to the showroom floor? We going to the F&I office? We're going over here. Can we sit down over here like this? Does that make sense? You guys feel me? Say rule number one, if there's ever any money involved, always sit down when you're presenting the money. Okay, how many times have you said How you doing, Andy Ellie? What's your name?
Sam.
Sam, nice to meet you. Sam, tell me what we got going on here. I know why you called out, you got a mesquite tree, but talk to me. How many trees we got on the property? Is there any more damaged trees? What's going on?
No.
Let's go check them out. By the way, how long you lived here? 5 years? Nice, man. Does this tree mean a lot to you? They're beautiful. You know how long it takes to grow a mesquite tree? Let me see the size of this thing. Let's go check it out. Hey, do I care about his property? Do I care about the home? Am I excited to see what he's got? Yeah. Listen to me. Order taker, tour guide, or closer. Okay, now listen. Here's my goal. Do I want to be the person that you want to spend your money with? Yeah, that's who I want to be. You came to this guy's house. Do you think he plans on being your buddy? Do we need him to be your buddy? Okay, so he doesn't plan on being your buddy, but we're going to make him our buddy. Okay, do you make people your buddy by acting like a buddy? Yeah. Andy Elliott, how you doing, man? What's your name?
Sam.
Sam, nice. I spoke to you on the phone. Nice to meet you, buddy. All right, so talk to me. Where are we going? Front yard, backyard? You lead the way. You're the boss. You're in charge. Let's go. Backyard. Let's roll. Can we go to the house?
Yeah.
Go around side. Do you want me to take my shoes off? What am I doing? I'm being polite. I care about it. You want to take my shoes off? Are we good? Okay, cool. I love it, man. It's your house. You're the boss. All right, what do we got here? Man, nice yard. Love the house. By the way, that's the tree. Beautiful tree. By the way, while I'm out here today, if I see some other things that look concerning, can I tell you about them? Yeah. Is that okay? Yeah. What am I doing? My upsell his ass right away. Okay, why? Who's the expert? Who's the authority? Who's the trusted guy? All right, so what did I tell you guys I would teach you today? How to be a master communicator. Now listen, I want you to understand, a master communicator is somebody that makes it easy to say yes to. That means whatever I say, it's easy for you to say yeah. It makes it hard to say no to. That means when I tell you what I want you to do, it's impossible for you to say no to me. And then I make it your idea. We're missing the make it your idea part. As a finance person, it's your job to set up the sale and make it the client's idea. Thank you so much for coming back here today. Number one, the salesman told me you're one of the nicest customers he's had all year. So that's amazing. I can't wait to help you guys out. We're gonna sign a little bit of paperwork. Now, before we do that, there's something called risk transfer. Okay, and that's the department I handle. And this is basically the opportunity at this point in time where we can transfer the risk if anything breaks to the warranty company. So if something breaks, they'll pay for it. Does that make sense? Cool. Now, how many working pieces do you think there's on a machine on the car? You're buying a 2020 model. How many working pieces do you think that there are on that car? 5,000, thousands, 30,000 working pieces on a machine, 30,000. They make these cars pretty in-depth now. Now, the biggest thing is if something goes out on this car, these 30,000s, it's not a matter of if something's gonna break, which I'm sure you're looking at a number, it's when. The question is when it breaks, who is gonna pay for it? So I wanna give you some information, and this will be the time that we decide.
What's going on, everyone? I want to make a quick video for you guys about the only 3 things to say when closing or selling. And the reason this came up was recently I was coaching our sales team. on just going over game tape footage, which is like, hey, how's, let's watch a sale from yesterday. What was done well, what was great, what was bad, what could have been improved, etc. And one of the habits that some of our team gets in, because our sales team is really knowledgeable. We call them business consultants because they really are. They really are business consultants. You know what I mean? And that's why sometimes it's harder to find good salespeople, because they have to have a really high level of understanding. If you're going to, the higher the level of the business that you're going to be selling, the higher level of expertise the person talking to them must have. If they have no context, that's why low level transactional sales, like if you're doing B2C, supplement sales over the phone, you really don't need to have an exquisitely, knowledgeable a rep. It's more about a very transactional process that's going to be very highly scripted, minimal variability, right? Whereas if you're talking about a complex business deal, right, then you need to have a very good understanding of their business, where there's potential opportunities, etc., right? And so sometimes it can be difficult because you may want to switch, and this is especially true when it's if you're the owner of the business, or you're integrally involved in just a couple of salespeople, you may get into the mode of trying to teach, which is one of the biggest A, mistakes, but B, one of the biggest hard things to not do. There's some good words, as a salesperson, right? Because if you're trying to close a deal, you want to educate the person, but the reality is they're not going to listen to you until they buy. And so there's no actual point in, quote, teaching, but you do want to coach. And that's something that I was talking about with my team yesterday, is the difference between teaching and coaching. And so fundamentally, there's only 3 types of statements that should come out of your mouth when you are selling. Number 1, and most likely to be coming out, is questions. All right. So if you don't know what types of questions, for us, I prefer question-based frameworks for more complex sales. And the reason for that is these are the types of questions that we would need to know the answer to in order to work with someone. It's also the only way that you can get someone to change their beliefs about something, because ultimately the person, especially the more complex, the higher level the sale, the more the person has to come to the conclusion on their own that they should work with you, and less feel forced or suggested. Hopefully that makes sense. And so we should ask leading questions that lead them to the conclusion that they should work with you and you can solve their problems. The second type of thing is a restatement, which means after they say something, you say it back to them, which means that you understand and you are listening. All right. So it's so what I'm hearing is, this is the primary issue that you've been trying to solve. This is what you've done so far, and this is why it hasn't worked. Does that sound about right? So that would be an example of a restatement. Notice, none of these things are declarative statements of fact. I'm not teaching them anything. All right, which is the same reason that people get in trouble when they do presentations to try and pitch. They try and teach. But the thing is person has to have their beliefs broken in order to take action. And you're not providing value in a real way, because the reality is they're not going to execute on anything you teach them. They will only execute if they have their beliefs broken and believe you can help them, and then that they can trust what you are saying. This was so hard for me to learn, because in the very beginning when I started Gym Lunch, I just wanted to go in and get on the phone with Jim. No, your pricing is all wrong. You got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do this. And they were just take lots of notes and then end up getting off the call, not buying, and then be like, well, I don't even know who this guy is. I'm just going to ignore it. And so I didn't actually help them. I thought I was helping them, but I was not actually helping them. And I actually heard this from Taki Moore, a good friend of mine. He said, everyone gets benefits from breaking beliefs. Only 10% of people get benefits from tactics. And so you actually are providing more value on the call by questioning their beliefs, because you're actually servicing 100% of the people providing value, compared to trying to give tactical advice that only 1 out of 10 people may or may not use. And likely the people who will use it are not buying from you. So either way, you're not benefiting your business, and you're also not benefiting theirs. That was a huge thing that I had to break with my own beliefs. And so then you might be wondering, well, if I'm only asking questions and restating things, how do I close the deal? Great question. Glad you asked. All right. And so what I like are short stories. And so the reason we do this is that, so we'd ask a series of questions. Hey, why are you here? What are you struggling with? Where are you at right now? Where are you trying to go? What have you tried so far? How's that working for you? Why is this important? Does it matter, within the bigger context of your life and what you're trying to do? Okay, great. This is what I'm hearing. I think this is why you haven't been successful. Would you agree with that? Does that make sense? Fantastic. Do you want to hear how our program works? Right. So at that point, you'd enter, quote, the pitch, right? Which is where you're going to explain how the services work. This is where most guys and gals will just blab. right? They'll just talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and try and teach about how they have this secret system, and really, I think Russell Brunson calls it technobabble. It's like you talk about your periodization, or you talk about your plan, or you talk about your programs, or talk about the softwares, or whatever, right? And the reality is they don't care. And so all we have to do, realistically, is tell a story that illustrates what they're going to experience as a result, all right? And so if I were trying to sell, I'll just use gym launch as a simple example. So if I'm like, listen, fundamentally, until you learn how to market your business, you're never going to be free. And earlier, you said that the goal, when we asked for context, was that you want to be free. You want this business to be able to run on its own. Does that sound about right? Yes. Okay, cool. Well, then do you see a world in which you're going to be able to outsource the most important part of your business, which is acquisition, lead generation, lead nurture, and sales? Do you feel like there's a world where you can just offload that responsibility and then somehow have a reliable business? Because what if that business goes out of business, which is likely happens all the time? Then what? Right, you're never actually going to be free until you learn this, which means you have to confront this either today, tomorrow, or 10 years from now, but you're going to have to do it. Does that sound fair to you? Does that make sense? Right? And so here, what I'm doing is I'm telling a story to break a belief. I'm not saying, let me show you how we're going to teach you how to market. Instead, I'm saying we have to at least come to an agreement that you need to learn this skill. Does that sound fair? Yes. And then the next kind of mini story, and if they didn't understand it, then it would be like, well, this is the difference between giving a fish and teaching a man to fish. Right now, you need to learn how to fish for yourself, right? In order for this business to be sustainable for you, right? Right. And so these are little analogies that you've already prepackaged. If I was selling weight loss, I would say something like, all right, well, fundamentally, fitness, nutrition, accountability, you need these three things. Fitness-wise, you're going to have to come and work out here. We agree that you need to work out, right? Right. Why haven't you been working out so far? I don't know how. Fair enough. Is it also because you're not motivated to do it? Yes. What if you actually, what's something that you like doing? Well, I like watching TV. Cool. What if working out was something that you could look forward to as much as or more than watching TV? If you liked working out more than watching television, which one would you think you would do? Well, I'd probably work out. Right. So our goal is not to get you to work out, but learn to like working out more than watching television. And if we can accomplish that, then we're going to solve this problem for good. Does that make sense? Yes. Notice, I told them they're going to have to work out. I did not talk about the exercise selection we're going to do, the programming, how we're going to ramp up their volume, their undulating periodization, the fancy exercise, like none of that stuff we talked about, because it doesn't matter. We have to just come to an agreement that this is what we're going to be doing to solve the problem. Does that make sense? Yes. Fantastic. Then we move forward, right? And so you'll have these prepackaged ideas. Another example is if I had somebody who wasn't, I'm giving you these examples to hopefully drive the point home. If someone said, you're gonna have to change the way you eat, for example, then I'd say, okay, well, you've probably tried stuff in the past, right? I'm not gonna talk to them about a fucking meal plan, right? It doesn't matter, right? It does matter, but not in this conversation, it does not matter. Fundamentally, you're going to change the way you eat because what you got, like why you are here is because of something you are currently doing. Does that sound fair? Right. Okay, cool. So again, with this example, I'd be like, well, do you like cake? Do you like cookies? Yes. Okay. So then do you think you could not eat cookies for the rest of your life? Do you think you can not eat cake or not eat ice cream for the rest of your life? Do you think that's reasonable? No, I don't think that's reasonable. Cool. So then we have to figure out a way for you to eat the things that you enjoy and still lose weight and do it in a way so that you look forward to it. Because at the end of the day, if you like the food more than you're currently eating, you will stick with it. Does that sound fair? Yes. Because do you think that you can sustainably give yourself willpower for the rest of your life? No. Okay, well then, can we agree that all we have to do is just simply figure out the foods that you will like, and that's an iterative process for us, and we'll walk through it, but the end goal is that you will like this more than you're currently eating, and as a result of that, we'll stick with it, which means that over the long haul, you'll get to where you want to go. Does that sound fair? Yes. Notice, again, this is an explanation, this is a mini story, this is an analogy that we'll use, and you should have multiple of these so you can drive the point home if you feel like the prospect does not understand what you are saying. Right? And so this is where we are coaching based on beliefs. We are not explaining or tacticalizing or technobabbling about our program because fundamentally it does not matter. They don't care, nor will they listen. They're not even paying it. Whenever you have a monotone, you can see it in gong recordings. If you don't record this, you can see talk time. You can see where engagement goes down. And invariably, it's when a salesman gets to this part of the pitch and then they talk for 5 minutes straight. No one cares. I'm sure that if you've ever been sold something, you feel like the person isn't listening to you, right? And so what I can say is the best way to sell is to have the person feel like you understand them. And the best way for someone to feel understood is for you to actually give a shit. If you actually give a shit, you will know what questions to ask in what order, because those are the questions that you would naturally ask. The reason scripts were even invented is to mimic or structure a conversation between somebody who cares and someone that they can help. That is what a sale is we're breaking their beliefs, we're coaching them to the conclusion that they have not been able to make up to this point, which is that they need to work with us in order to solve their problem. And we should be okay with the fact that I would like to provide value to this person so that I can break their beliefs around this, whether they work with me or not. This is still the type of solution that they're going to need. And if you can approach it like that, you stop having your ego tied up in your closing percentages and your numbers, and instead you start helping people on the phone, and by extension, you will sell more deals. All right? And it's not by proving your expertise and ego babbling about how smart you are, right? Instead, it's asking them questions, making sure they understand that you're tracking what they're saying, asking more leading questions, restating what they said, and then when they ask you about how they could potentially work for you, then and only then do you give them the stories to explain how it works. That's the deal. And one of the big rules that I was hitting on with our sales team yesterday is you do not pitch the program until you believe the person will say yes. Lawyers do not ask questions they do not already know the answers to. Most guys don't propose to someone without already know the person's gonna say yes. The take rate on proposals is very high, right? Let's be real. Most girls say yes to a proposal. Most, right? I'm not saying all, but most do. And sales should be the same way. If you feel like you don't think you're gonna close this person, do not pitch them. Continue to stay in this circle where you are asking questions and reinstating and clarifying until you can eventually find that piece, that thread that was unexposed that you need to pull to then get them to say that, aha, that's the issue, right? And so from this, the three things that you should be using when you are closing is you should be asking questions, you should be restating what they said, and then once you've exhausted these pieces where it becomes obvious that you need to move on the sale, only at that point they'll say, well, how do I work with you? How does the program work? They should be asking you. Or you can at the very least say, would you like to know how the program works? I think it might be a good fit for you. At that point, they can give you permission to say yes. Now, if someone says, hey, tell me how the program works. It's like, no, I don't think we're ready for that right now. I need to understand more about your business. Otherwise, it's not gonna make any sense. I don't have enough context. Right? And again, when you do that, you can retake the frame in the conversation. If someone's commanding you around, you're not going to close the deal, right? And so a lot of times, usually within the first 5 to 10 minutes, you can tell whether you're not going to close the deal. Most experienced salespeople know by how the first 5 to 10 minutes go, whether this person is, really even 5 minutes, you can tell whether you're going to be able to close this person or not. And if you don't feel like you're going to be able to close this person, it means you need a state shift. You need to shift the frame. And the only way to do that is to ask questions that are challenging. One of the things I have my team say is closers ask hard questions, right? Is ask questions that are going to challenge their current paradigm. If they're in a current paradigm that they're getting on the phone because they want to prove to themselves that nothing's going to work for them, then you need to say, it sounds like you're out of luck. It sounds like your business is there's no way for you to succeed. Does that sound about right? And then they're going to sell you on why you're wrong. But by selling you on why they're wrong, they're taking a contrarian stance, which then proves to you that there is a way. Rather than saying, no, I think you can be successful. And they're like, no, I can't be successful, right? And so understanding that before you get into your pitch, the person must already be sold on working with you is one of the biggest things I can give you right now. So if your script has too many paragraphs and too much explanation and all of that stuff, then it's off. It just needs to be questions and restating for clarification that you are hearing what they're saying and asking the next natural question that will lead logically to them working with you and asking the question at the end, which is, well, how do I do this? That sounds amazing. That's exactly what I want. Like, how do I move forward? What's the details, etc. And then at that point you say, cool, this is how it works. Ready to rock and roll. All right, fair enough? Hope that makes sense. Keep being awesome. Lots of love. And I'll see you guys on the flip side. Bye. You guys want to hear something completely insane? Yes? Okay. You're going to have to hear it anyways. I was able to take home more in a year than the CEOs of McDonald's, IKEA,
One of the biggest challenges I hear from financial advisors is surrounded by one word: growth. How do I grow more? Well, what I want to talk about here today is how you can actually utilize technology to help your firm grow, both on new clients and also referrals. My name is Matt Reiner, and I want to show you how growth can happen in your firm today, right away. So referrals are still one of the biggest drivers for firm growth. People telling other people about how good their financial advisor is. What is the driver of them telling someone else how good their financial advisor is? It's because their financial advisor did something different for them, did something unique that stood out, that was memorable. That's how all referrals happen. Great service, great performance, whatever it may be. So for a financial advisor, you have to be able to show your unique value proposition or your value in a differentiated way. Too often in this industry, everybody hinges their value on their investment allocation or sometimes their performance, and that is a very slippery slope. So as a financial advisor, you can utilize your technology to help better understand more about your clients and use that information to differentiate your value and service to your clients. What do I mean? Instead of having conversations always around the markets and the portfolio, why not spend some time talking about their personal life, which you'd likely already do? But where is that information stored? You remember it in your head, you maybe put it in your notes that get lost 3 meetings later. Figure out a way to put custom fields into your CRM to have alerts based on things that the client likes, about their family, about their hobbies, whatever it may be. Because the value and differentiated opportunity that you have as a financial advisor is not calling them to schedule a meeting. Rather, it's calling them because you just read an article about the top 50 US golf courses, and you know that Jim Smith is a huge golfer. And you pick up the phone, you call him, you see if he's seen the article, you send it over to him, and then you spend time talking about how you can use your services of financial advising and investing to help Jim Smith and his buddies go and play the course that he's always been wanting to play. That is unique value. And how do you do that? Well, you need to have more time on your side. You have to have more time to be able to develop deeper, more meaningful, and value-oriented relationships with your clients. And you can also leverage technology. How do you have your technology constantly notify you of things that are relevant to specific clients, like Jim Smith?
Are you an aspiring financial advisor? Well, today I want to show you the fastest, most effective ways to build your clientele. Time to think like an investor. Here, my name is Josh. I'm a certified financial planner, and I run my own wealth management business. And what that means is I help people work out their financial plans and their investments and all sort of financial products. But it took me a long time to get here, and I made a lot of mistakes along the way. But today, we're actually up to the point where we're just shy of about 300 amazing clients, and we're managing over $10 million in assets. And I think we're actually getting closer to 12. It's just growing all the time. This past week was a really great week. And I just want to explain, it was not always this way. I did not get here easily. I started this business back in 2016, I believe is when it began. So it's almost been a full 5 years. And it is crazy just how much easier it is now to grow. Now that I know what I'm doing and I've had that experience of grinding through those first initial years. And if I can remember back to what you might be going through if you're new and aspiring, it's absolutely terrifying because yes, there's so many great things about this business and this career. You get to help people achieve their goals and plan for their future and give them that incredible mind-boggling experience of showing them compound interest for the first time and how they can build wealth and retire one day. It's so exciting, but the problem is you have to find people to talk to. You have to find your own clients, which is petrifying for a lot of people. And I remember when I first got into the business, it was absolutely petrifying for me too because, I wanted to be successful, but I was super apprehensive because who knows if you're going to get rejected? Who knows if anyone is going to want to sit and talk to you whatsoever? And you might have a mortgage to pay, you might have car bills, and how in the heck are you going to make enough money and build your business enough to survive? Those are probably the big questions going through your head, and that's certainly what was going through mine. Now, to set the expectations, and if it makes you feel better, I absolutely grinded my butt off. I was always the first one in and the last one out of the office, and I went through a full year of trying to do business, and I ended up with 80 clients. Now, 80 is a lot because you have to do a lot more meetings than that to actually get to the point where you've closed 80 different clients. And at the beginning, they're all going to be very small. For me, I was at a firm that didn't have a minimum investment requirement, and I think that out of those 80 clients, we just had shy of $1 million in assets, which means it was like less than, for sure less than $20,000 per client. I mean, some would have 50,000, but most were starting from scratch, and I was just helping them get started. So this was by no means some fast track to a high income because it was an absolute slog for the first couple of years. Now, there's no getting over the fact that you do have to pay your dues at the beginning. There's no way that this is going to be easy, but there are certain ways you can do it better. And there were some things that I really wish I would have known when I got into the business. But before I get into that, there's something super important to understand, and it's this psychology of scarcity when you are trying to, I don't want to say the word sell something, but in the reality, you're trying to convince someone to do business with you, and you're trying to convince them to trust you with your life savings. So there's this element of sales involved, and the trickiest thing about sales is the scarcity mentality that you have when you need the sale. There's a massive difference between dealing someone who needs and wants something from you versus dealing with someone who's kind of impartial. Sure, they'd love to make a win-win happen if it's there, but if nothing transpires and there's no deal to be done, that's just fine. That is a way more laid back to the sales process as opposed to you have to buy this, you have to do this, or else I can't pay my bills. That is something that you have to get over. And the reason the first few years are really difficult is because you need it. You need those deals, you need those clients, and everyone that rejects you kind of gives you a downvote. But the great news is that once you're past that, it gets a lot easier. Once you can go into a client proposal meeting and be completely kind of impartial to what happens, you can release your attachment or your connection to the outcome, and you can just be yourself. That is when things get much easier. But before that, there's a lot of things you're gonna have to do, and there's a lot of action you're gonna have to take to get to the point where you're at least self-sustaining. Now, in all likelihood, you're gonna have some form of sales trainer, a person in the business who is trying to mentor you and show you how it's done. Now, the problem with that person is they're probably 70. They might even be older. And what that means is they're pretty much completely out of touch with how communication goes on nowadays. For instance, one of the #1 ways we are taught to get clients is to cold call. That is a horrible idea. I remember getting into my mentor's office or my director's office for the first time, and he said, okay, time to start getting clients. I'm like, oh, great, I'm all excited. He's like, all right, open up your contacts. And I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, open up your contacts. We're gonna call every single person in your phone contacts. And I said, excuse me? We're gonna call everybody right now? It's like 8 p.m. on a Thursday. It's like, yeah, we're gonna start calling people. And I had to get on the phone and try to convince people to come in for a meeting. And I was completely blindsided. I didn't know this was gonna happen. That was terrifying. And guess what? It never works. My success rate was 0%. And if you are into this business and you're kind of afraid of cold calling, well, great news. You shouldn't be doing it. You don't have to do it. It doesn't work anymore. What you need to replace that with is something similar but modern. And what I believe, and I've said this before in other videos, is the #1 way to get publicity is to start producing online content, okay? It's like its own version of cold calling. You're getting in front of people, showing them something of value or something of interest, and seeing if they can reciprocate or correspond or message you back. And what I mean by this is, while you're going through your career, you're probably learning all sorts of things. You're reading all the most important books on investing, you're reading the foundational books of financial planning. While you're going through and learning these things, document them, put them into a YouTube video, put them into a blog post, and what you have is a piece of content that you can share across all of your social media. Now, instead of going one by one to each person and messaging them or cold calling them, which is frankly very weird, you can blast out something that you're genuinely passionate about and see who reciprocates. Over time, certain people are going to be liking your posts and certain people will be commenting or engaging. What you do from there is you just keep track of those people. And if someone's very engaged, over time you could reach out to them and say, hey, are you open to having a conversation? I think that is probably the #1 way I was able to get clients. And my manager, frankly, was blown away that I could do that. He was like, that works, that's so weird. And I looked at him and thought he was a freak because he randomly called people. Now, the next thing everybody talks about is networking. You have to go and network and meet people and go to events. And frankly, I just hate that word. And the reason is because networking doesn't work. You go to a networking event and everyone's nervous to talk to each other because everybody in the room knows that they're all trying to get something out of each other and everyone's trying to sell you this, that, and the other thing. The reality is that you need to redefine networking because it is extremely important to network, but don't think of it as networking with an objective. See, the thing about networking is the best way to do it is to have zero intention. It's more like socializing. You see, for me, I was always really fascinated with people. And I think this is an advantage I had is I always, in my high school, I knew the name of every single person. For some weird reason, you could point to a face in the yearbook and I was like, that's that person, they're in that grade. For some reason, I was very obsessed with who is that person? Who are they? What's my connection to them? And over time, as I started socializing and meeting different people, it just expanded the range of people that might follow me on social media or someone that might be interested in what I do. So I wouldn't consider it networking, but you have to be socializing. Part of your job is going to be getting out there and meeting more and more people so that you can capture more potential opportunities. So it's massively important to be a very social person. Something else that I was advised to do was always try to see where there was a money-making opportunity. Instead of maybe having to go and get more clients, try to maximize the money you could get out of one. That seems obscene. It seems totally outrageous. You should almost be thinking the complete opposite way. And I want to talk to you about something that actually worked unbelievably well for me. It seems pretty counterintuitive. And my thought was provide free value. Give away free information. Whenever someone DMs you or whenever someone asks you a question or whenever you can, give away as much value for free as possible. And that goes against all the business sense that people have, which is make sure you can get a paying customer. But the reality is that when you have no paying customers and you have nowhere to go but up, you have to think about getting your value out there. And a lot of the time, you can think of this like, being a videographer, being a photographer. You want to do free work for people so they can see how good you are, or you want to provide people advice for free so that they have that social credit with you. They feel like they owe you something, and not in some sort of terrible way, but they feel as if you provided them value and they want to return the favor and reciprocate that way. So I think in terms of producing online content or socializing, being someone who is always giving and being someone who's always responding and providing value to people who have questions is a massive leg up for finding more clients. And the last thing that comes to mind is I was always pressured to ask for referrals. Once I got a new client, I was supposed to sit down with that person and say, okay, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, who else do you know in your constituency who would have a relatively large amount of assets and blah, blah, blah. It was just terrible. Like, how do you talk to someone like that and say, hey, I've sold you something. Do you have any other friends I can sell stuff to? It doesn't really go over that well. So I want to think about it a different way. What I would do is make sure I did a tremendous job of pitching that client and giving that client a fantastic experience, and also making sure that I followed up over time. Every single year getting in front of them, every couple months getting into contact, seeing how they were doing with life in general, and kind of having more of a friendship. And over time, what that did is it created referrals for me. It wasn't as if I had to beg for them or ask for them. It took a little bit of time for those to start to roll in. But right now, today, by far and away, my largest source of new clients is referrals. And when I started, by far the biggest source was social media. So over time, you're kind of building this presence as someone who provides value, and you're giving away free value and attracting attention. That's what's going to get you the clients at the start. And as you do great work for them, they're going to start to refer. By the time you're in your 3rd or 4th year, all of these seeds you planted and been watering are going to start to actually grow and bear fruit. And you're going to have more clients than you know what to deal with, which seems like a really good problem, but then you're on to the next problem. But anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching this video and spending your time here. If you learned anything from this video whatsoever and want to support the channel, make sure to hit that like button below, hit subscribe, and turn on post notifications for more videos just like this one every single week. Until next time.
I don't know why that slide is not working, but essentially, we found that there are 3 skills that essentially IFAs need, and which clearly the wealthy want. They want what we call is the I know skill. So they want you as an advisor to them to be able to know a certain number of things. I think again the first item in there, which is about knowledge of economy and markets, is really about the fact that, again, you go back to Uma's conversation. I think they want to be able to have an intelligent conversation with you. They may not know everything themselves, but they certainly think that you as an investment advisor need to be able to know that. And again, it's about going out there and having a conversation which very, very clearly is in their language. They need to be able to understand what you're saying in a very, very simple form. The second thing that they need you to know is what are their family's needs and what are their family's goals. I think a lot of us, do practice financial planning in our businesses. Some of us don't. I think we can call it by whatever name we want. But essentially the whole understanding is really about knowing very clearly why someone is saving money and why he's investing that money with you. And the moment you have that answer, suddenly things become very, very easy. Again, to give you an example, we find that the moment there is a client of ours who, let's say for example, there's a client of ours who recently went through a serious medical condition, right? He has children who live in the US, and all of you know that mutual funds now don't accept monies, or most mutual fund companies don't accept monies for US residents. What happens is if something happened to him, his nominees are his daughters who are all in the US. And while the nomination process will work in terms of transmission in a normal course, the moment the money goes in the hands of the daughters, automatically the money will get redeemed and the money will come back. Now the reason why we know this is because we know everything about his family, we know where his children are, and therefore the advice that we were able to give them on how to build his or her succession plan was different from what we would have been able to do if we didn't know everything about his or her family. Very, very critical. The goal that he had was that the money should transfer to my children without any difficulty. That was a simple objective. And therefore, the solution that we had to use was not a regular nomination process that you apply like for all your other clients, but you needed to give them something which was a little more complex. You need to be able to share information on things that impact families' finances. So for example, this whole debate right now about, or the good thing about inflation coming down in India. One of the conversations that we're constantly having with our clients now is that maybe if inflation continues in this trajectory and India now gets to a point where there is a government agreement that inflation in India should be 4% plus minus 1%, suddenly all of our goals may actually need to get reset, because from targeting inflation at 7-8%, we are now going to be in an environment of 4-5%. Now, of course, investment returns will also fall. It's unlikely that, if inflation falls, everything will continue to generate the same rate of return. But I think when you're having these conversations, this is very contextual, it's relevant to clients, they're able to understand inflation the right way, rather than about, CPI has gone from 4.31 to 5.12. I mean, that's got no context in there. The fourth thing is matching investment performance expectations. And here it's really, really important that the key word in there is expectations. A lot of what happens is really about what people are expecting from your investment portfolio. And therefore, we spend one meeting with clients just telling them what they should be expecting. It's full 1 hour just talking about expectations from an investment portfolio. And therefore, what happens is it's very easy for us to go back and tell clients that let's go back to our investment performance expectation meeting that we had initially. And that's where we said that historically data shows that equity returns can tend to be very volatile over less than 5 years. And therefore, if you're coming to me and worrying about what happened because we had a bad budget, then I think you shouldn't be worrying about it. Here's the conversation. You want us to talk back about it, we'll discuss it again. The last thing about I know is also that you should know what you don't know. And therefore, where you think you don't know something, you need to be having a network where you can go out and seek help. I think a lot of us need to understand our limitations. I don't think clients ever worry about hearing from you that I don't know as an answer, as long as it's not too frequent. So one of the things that you tend to do when you're dealing with wealthier clients is try to build that network of people who are specialists. They could be chartered accountants, lawyers, they could be a whole lot of people, but essentially you have to build them in, because that's when you're showing them they're truly advisory in nature and your expertise lies in a certain area, and beyond that you're going to someone else. I then move to what I call the eye care skills. These are essentially demonstrating that you know things, but you also care about them and their families. So what you'll find in here, and I'm just going to focus on a couple of them because the rest is up there for you to see, is a lot of us do want to do a lot of marketing of our practices, and obviously that's good for growth of our businesses. But I don't think clients necessarily look at it in the same way. A lot of wealthy clients actually look at it as saying that this is actually going to make things worse for us, because now he's going to have to deal with so many more clients, and therefore the attention that I get is actually going to be less than what it used to be. So you have to be able to demonstrate that by giving them the sense that there is now an organization which has got created, and therefore the help that they will get will not change. So let's say, for example, if you tell someone that, I was at a conference where I was going to speak and I got late because the conference was late, and therefore, I couldn't make it on time, and therefore your family and you and your family's dinner outing is out tonight. I don't think he likes it at all. So you might think you're being very intelligent and smart by actually going out there and telling him, oh, you know what, I'm actually talking at a conference. So, he thinks, oh wow, this guy talks at conferences. But that's not what he's thinking. He's saying that this guy doesn't care about me or my family. The other bit which always kind of comes by is what we think is the most important part, which is what you do. And this is what I call the I do skills, which is essentially that, you can keep talking, you can keep knowing, you can keep caring. But the question is that what is it that you're actually doing on the ground? So a few things that we found very, very helpful is communication, which is very clear, very timely. So for example, if you've had a interest rate hike in 2013 on the back of the huge rupee crash that happened, the next morning before people got to work, there was communication of one page available for them to read, saying that this is what happened last night, this is what is likely to be the impact on your portfolio, and this is what you need to be careful about. But remember your financial goals, 5 years to kids' education, 10 years to retirement, whatever else it may be. What you'll also need to realize is that it's not so much about fees and commission. This whole debate happens quite often, but it's actually a lot about transparency. We've actually discovered that the more transparent you are about saying that this is how much money I earn, this is the amount of fee that I charge. So, for example, in our practice, we have a fee-based model. So we actually have fees from clients, and we also earn commissions. And we are very transparent, telling them that, this is broadly the range of money that we make. Our trail incomes are maybe 0.5% to 1%. Our advisory fee is whatever it is. And we find that the fact that you are not transparent is what creates the problem. It's not actually about the fee or the commission. Last but not the least is keeping financial documents in place. You'll be surprised at how important it is a thing for wealthy clients. It just seems like so routine, it seems like it's no big deal at all. But a lot of times, you'll find that if you ask people the top 3 reasons why they stay with you as an advisor, they will tell you that you just help them to be more organized. And that's something that, doesn't really require any skills at our end. So let's go quickly to the recipe to get wealthy clients. We think there's attitude, aptitude, activities. So what's the attitude? It's really about setting goals. What goals are we talking about? We're talking about 3 sets of goals. One are sales goals, the second is networking goals, the third is self-upgradation goals. These are all 3 different kinds of goals that you need to set for yourself. What tends to happen is that we find that a lot of people actually don't set these goals at all. They essentially set goals only at one level, which is number of clients, AUM, revenue. It depends on how you track your business. But essentially, that's a process. Process-based item. So you will get number of clients because you have either networked or you have upgraded your skills so that those clients want to come to you. So essentially you have to set goals in all 3 areas. You need to obviously be moving beyond Excel. I think the whole thing which Nirmal spoke about just before this was about vision and no vision. I think the challenge is about how much of a vision you're actually converting to reality. And I think a lot of us, and I definitely suffered from that when I started off, because I came from the corporate world and I was used to believing that all solutions in life come through Excel-based formulas. And I realized very quickly that that doesn't work at all. It's really about what's the activities and what's the meetings that you're doing, and that's really going to translate into achieving your goals. The key part in doing all of this is you got to do it regardless of what you think. So what happens is when you set a goal, you suddenly start thinking that, oh my God, no, but I don't think it sounds right. I don't feel like doing it today. Tomorrow is when we'll do it, etc., etc. I think that's where the whole challenge around goal setting happens, which is that you put it down on paper, and then you start thinking about it and saying, did I set the right goal? I think the way to know whether you set the right goal or not is 3 months later to evaluate whether you set the right goal or not. Not tomorrow morning when you have to do the first task. The next bit is about aptitude. And what's aptitude? It's about investing in yourself. That's our business. We are talking walking ads of our business. And therefore, what we keep saying is that the more you invest in yourself, the better off you're going to be. I think as an investment advisory business, I'm no different from a pharmaceutical business. A pharmaceutical business basically develops because of the fact that it has a R&D budget. It develops because it's spending time to build a pipeline of drugs which are going to come out and give different treatment. And we are no different as investment advisors. Our whole ourselves is everything that the client is buying. And therefore, we need to be able to very clearly be that. I'm sure a lot of you all have heard about how Anil Ambani became as fit as he is today. And obviously, it was because he came out of a press conference where he was told that how do you take care of a company? This is how you actually look. And this is how you take care of yourself. And I think that's so true for advisory businesses. The other bit is very clearly understand your proposition. Now, what happens is that your proposition can either be unique, which means that you're the only one person who does it. Very difficult to find this, because what happens is that requires a lot of effort to say that I'm the only person who does this. So I would tend to believe that for a lot of individual entrepreneurs, it's very, very difficult to find a unique selling proposition. I think what you will find is something which is different or something which is special. So let me give an example. I think what a lot of individual advisors could do, which is different, is that they could be working on serious goal-based planning. I think it's different, but it's not unique. There will be 250 other people, probably in your city, who will be doing the same thing. There'll be probably 1,000 people in the country who will be doing the same thing. But it's clearly different from what another 1 lakh advisors are doing. And that's why it's so critical in terms of what you do. The other bit is, really allocating your, what I call the ST budget, which is your self-development budget. Again, it needs to go back to different places. And a lot of people debate, what this number should be. In our practice, we found that anywhere between 5 to 10% of the income that you earn should logically be going back in self-development. And I'd be surprised if I ask people in this room to put up their hands to say that, they actually have a self-development budget in their own balance sheet. Ultimately, this is what we are doing. This is our business, which is us. And therefore, if you have that budget, you need to put it to good use. You need to use it for soft skill development. Wealthy clients need soft skills. You need to be able to have a good conversation with them. You need to be able to have the right etiquette training. You need to be able to do the right things when you're with their family. Very, very critical. And a lot of this can be bought today at a very low cost. It just takes 2 days of training. You can get access to it. You, of course, need to spend money on research. And you need to figure out how you can be a specialist in something. Ultimately, everyone wants to deal with someone who's a specialist in something. You have to decide what that something for you is. There's no right answer on this. There's no one answer on this, but you have to discover something that you can say, I'm a specialist at. Again, it's not about uniqueness, it's about speciality. So you could position yourself, again, Uma spoke about SIP Patil. That's a speciality that I look at. And just for that, you need to look at what your specialty is and go out and talk to wealthy clients. Remember that it has to appeal to the wealthy client. So for example, if a wealthy client doesn't believe in the proposition of SIPs, that cannot be a specialty when you're dealing with him. Last but not the least is activities, which is essentially that what you do today in terms of activity will give you revenues tomorrow. So what we need to do is focus on high impact activities. The reality is time is the only inventory that all of us have as investment advisors. And therefore what we need to be able to do is figure out what is it that I'm going to do with my time. Number one is convert referrals into introductions. I think a lot of us ask for referrals. I think the way the world works today is that it's very easy to know who knows who. And therefore if you ask for a specific introduction to someone, you're very likely to get it. Just for example, if you know that there is a brother-in-law of your client who you have discovered on LinkedIn is the ideal kind of client that you want to have. If you ask for a specific introduction to his brother-in-law, it's very likely that you'll get it. Against asking him, saying that, I've given you such good service for the last 5 years, look at your investment portfolio, why don't you give me some referrals? There's a big difference between the two. The second thing that we found is what we call strategic networking. So I think networking is all good, but you need to be strategic in terms of what you do, which essentially means that you have to be able to earn professional respect through the networking that you do. So a lot of people say, join a Rotary Club, for example. I think you find that benefits of Rotary or any other memberships tend to come if you get actively involved in the whole process where you start to take responsible roles, you give it a lot of time, and so on and so forth. So therefore, the benefit is going to come after a considerable period of time of investing, that precious time which is your inventory, before you actually are able to gain from it. Last but not the least is get into what are called referral alliances. This is very big all over the world. I'm not sure how much of it happens in India right now. We have some of these, where essentially it's based on the law of reciprocity, which basically means that I refer my clients, you refer yours. Nothing else. There's no other process involved. There is no money changing hands. There is nothing else. The reason why this happens is simply because of the fact that clients do want, or other advisors do want their clients to get access to good advice. And if you're able to show them that you can give them good advice, they're happy to send people to you. Not every relationship will be equal. So it won't be that every of these alliances that you build in will give you the same amount as you give back to them. But the reality is that when you have a section of 20 of these guys, on an average, from those 20, you will get the same number of clients as you gave to those 20 as a group. And that's a very, very important part for us to be able to develop our business, especially on the wealthier client side. Thank you very much.
In your practice, how have you dealt with competition when you are going after wealthy clients?
And therefore, what will happen is that by the time the first meeting is over, there will probably be some product solution that will be there, or at the most, the second meeting. I think what we've seen over a period of time is that the lesser we've been talking products early on, and this could mean as much as 3 meetings where you don't discuss products at all, we find that people are able to see that this is truly different, and therefore they are willing to switch. I think the process would be slow. They'd start off, test you out, but I think over a period of 2 years, we found that most of them move a substantial part of their wallet to us.
See, somewhat related to the first question. Wealthy clients are very egoistic. How do you handle them, and they do not necessarily respect IFAs? So how do you overcome that part of it? Which is an ego gratification.
Right.
If I'm successful, I want to deal with someone who's from Citibank. I don't want to deal with an IFA. How would you deal with that?
Right. So I think this is really about being able to position yourself right. And I think this is not about being an IFA or not being an IFA. It's about how you present yourself into meetings. It's about what you're doing before you meet the client for the first time. So I'll give you an example. One of the things that we do is that before we meet a prospect for the first time, we have actually sent in a lot of communication about us to him already. So it's not that he He's discovering me for the first time during the course of this particular first meeting. He's got a professional docket which has already come to him saying this is what we do, this is the experiences of our clients, this is how we work with clients and so on and so forth, which is no different from what a Citibank would have done. In fact, in all likelihood, Citibank wouldn't have done that before their meeting, but they would typically carry this into the meeting. So we find that a lot of this is typically going to come through how you go back and ask yourself saying that, how can I be treated as an equal? Because I am an equal. At the end of the day, I know more about financial advice than the client does. It's just that he may have more money. And therefore, as long as in our mind we are able to clear this up very clearly, I think we'll be able to get on that equal path.
Okay, now what is the frequency of meetings that you could expect or you should maintain with your wealthy clients? Is there any set formula?
So this is the area that we think we have some very dramatically different views from everyone else. And this is because we learned it from experience. So when we started off, we used to actually believe that the more you interact with wealthy clients, the more business you'll get. So we used to try to kind of meet them once in a fortnight, sometimes in once a week. And we discovered that we have nothing to talk about. Because nothing changes in people's lives in 1 week or 2 weeks, except for financial markets. And really the client doesn't want to discuss financial markets, or the wealthy client doesn't want to discuss financial markets. So over a period of time, we've discovered that the right way to address this is to ask the client how frequently he'd like to meet. So most of our clients are very happy being met once a quarter. Some of them are okay with once in 6 months. A sprinkling of them want to meet once a month. A sprinkling of them want to meet once a year. But essentially, most of our clients are very comfortable with either once a quarter or once in 6 months.
Now, very often you deal with wealthy clients, and there could be a situation where there is a difference within the family members. How do you handle such a sensitive situation?
So actually, the reason for the differences in family members in our experience has been because they've actually never sat together with who they perceive as a third party who's neutral. And therefore, the positioning that we are able to take in that entire conversation is really about being a neutral third party. And that's a little bit about the kind of fee models that you run, the kind of advisory positioning that you take. I'm assuming for a minute that we can keep this as simple as family members who are husband and wife, who actually think that, so the wife wants to be very conservative, the husband wants to be very aggressive. we discovered that goal-based planning actually does solve this problem very easily because what it allows you to demonstrate is trade-offs involved. So for example, if I'm in a situation where I want to be very conservative, but I'm not able to achieve the goal, then the client understands the trade-off and so does his wife. And they themselves figure out whether they want to be conservative or they want to trade off the goal. And that tends to work more often than not. So the only way, in our view, that this can be solved is to ensure that both of them are with you at the same time. And that always happens. I mean, you can force that to happen by refusing to have the meeting till both of them are at the same time in the same place.
Given the kind of time and attention that you give to wealthy clients, is it a good idea for you to look at getting 100% share of his wealth, or should you be happy with just one part of it?
So what we've discovered is that getting 100% or close to 100% of his wallet is where the maximum opportunity will lie. But you don't always get the wallet, but you get the share of his mind. And therefore, what you end up doing is you end up becoming what I would call is a master advisor. So even if he deals with someone else, he still calls you and tells you that, you know what, this is my banker, this is your end, he has to put money into something. Now he's giving me these 4 products, can you just evaluate it and tell me? And we'll do that for them. So essentially what has happened is you've become his go-to man for anything to do with money. And I think that's good enough because what it then means is that effectively he's bonded to you in a good sense. And therefore, he gives you an opportunity to kind of raise your fees, do a lot of other things which you cannot do necessarily only with getting AUM.
And we will have a quick coffee break and we'll come back in 20 minutes.